Hi there, thank you for joining us for the news review. We'll be joined shortly by Executive Secretary for COPEC, Duncan Amwa, but let's dig into the papers. The Daily Graphic this morning saying government restricts maize, soya bean exports policy to ensure food security. Let's bring you some highlights of that. And the government has restricted the export from the country of maize and soya beans, two important commodities in the poultry subsector. It is part of measures to ensure food security and increase local poultry and livestock production. Subsequently, the Plant Protection and Regulatory Services Directorate has stopped issuing phytosanitary certificates for the export of both commodities. This follows a directive from the Ministry of Trade and Industry to restrict their export to ensure the availability of the produce whose production is subsidized. And now, the context is that President Akufo-Addo issued an executive approval for a temporary restriction to be placed on maize and soya bean exports in January this year. Consequently, stakeholders such as the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, the Ministry of Trade and Industry, the Ministry of the Interior, the Ministry of Local Government, Decentralization and Rural Development, the Ministry of Finance, the Ghana Revenue Authority, the Ghana Export Promotion Authority, and others will soon meet to discuss how best to implement the export restriction. Now, data available from the World Integrated Trade Solutions indicates that the export of maize from Ghana amounted to 250,147 kilograms in 2019. It also reported that the export of flour and meals of soya beans from the country was 54,500 kilograms for the same period. You can check out more details in the Daily Graphic newspaper. But of course, on the back of happenings across the world, we would also want to guarantee some food sufficiency or food security, and that is why this measure is being adopted. Reconstruction exercise, not load shedding. Now, it has been in the news, circulating on social media, that some 84 days of doomsday were expected. GRIDCO, together with the ECG, are debunking this, assuring consumers that this is not what is going to happen. Let's go to page 16 for details. And the management of the Ghana Grid Company Limited, that is GRIDCO, has assured the public that the reconstruction works that started recently will not lead to load shedding, popularly known as doomsday. A joint statement issued by GRIDCO and the ECG in Accra yesterday said reconstruction work on GRIDCO's transmission lines had commenced since last Saturday and assured the public that the work would not orchestrate power outages. And so that is the latest in terms of that development. COA GPM allocates $2 million towards global peace campaign. That story is also on page 16. And if you're wondering which entity this is, now, the Center of Awareness Global Peace Mission, a non-governmental organization committed to promoting world peace, has allocated that sum of money, $2 million, towards a campaign for global peace. The amount is to support a 5-year strategic plan launched to promote world peace. Already, 24 vehicles to be used in the campaign have been purchased. The founder and president general of COA GPM, Professor Samuel Ato Duncan, said the campaign was a selfless movement committed to bringing peace to the world. Let's check out some other stories, and you would see on the very front page of the Daily Graphic a scene that you likely have spotted before, right here in Accra, in the center of town. Cattle take over Central Business District. How can this happen anywhere? Ask yourself, how does this happen anywhere? But it happens in Accra and other, big towns or cities. Now, efforts to make the national capital, Accra, the cleanest city in Africa, are being thwarted by the invasion of some principal streets and areas by cattle. Now, a week-long observation by the Daily Graphic has revealed the invasion by herds of cattle of the Central Business District. It is particularly common on the Graphic Road, precisely the Toyota Beyiman traffic intersection near the Graphic Road BRT flyover and the Agbogloshi stretch. You would see them practically every day. Yesterday, cameraman Ebo Hansen captured some of the stray animals roaming. The most worrying aspect was that there were no herdsmen herding the cattle. So you get it. The inconvenience to pedestrians, motorists, and everybody. The fact that this can result in accidents, the fact that someone's cow or whatever could get injured, and that would also lead to many problems. I mean, the injured cow could block the road, it could create vehicular traffic, anything could happen. Someone could be gored by the horns of these cattle. All of these things, yet you see them happening in this country as though we were some sort of I don't like using these terms, but Banana Republic. Look at how lunatics line our streets. Where does that happen? It happens in Accra, Ghana. Look at how cattle, they create such an inconvenience. It happens right here in Accra. And sometimes it takes us doing this, putting this, as a major headline. And it's still happening in the country. For how many decades has this happened? And when are we going to find some solutions to this? They are creating chaos. Chaos. And we look on. City authorities, we look on. Mayor of Accra, you look on. Henry Kwati, Greater Accra Regional Minister. This will definitely not make Accra the cleanest city in Africa. Definitely not. And they go around and they are, easing themselves and all of that on our streets. Anyway, sometimes this country just makes me, but it is what it is. Let's look at some other stories. Up to 65% of Africans have had COVID-19. Up to 65% of Africans have had COVID-19. That's data from the World Health Organization. And Barrow, I'm talking about Gambian President Adama Barrow's party narrowly wins legislative polls. And tying the pieces together, we also know that in France, one danger that people have looked at, Marine Le Pen. And she has made it to the second round. As of yesterday, we're looking at around 23%, but now about 25%. President Emmanuel Macron with 28%. So about a gap of about 3 percentage points. The two of them are going for the runoff, and it's going to be a pretty tight call. But it was similar the last time Emmanuel Macron came to power. So we'll see how things pan out. But for industry watchers, or for those who watch these things, first of all, Marine Le Pen is friends with Vladimir Putin. She is also friends with Viktor Orban of Hungary. And Viktor Orban is one of those who hasn't sanctioned Russia. And we all know the situation with Vladimir Putin. In fact, if France votes for her, the implications are that they could be the standout country in the EU that doesn't support sanctions on Vladimir Putin's Russia. And it's a whole mix. The other side that concerns a lot of Africans, and we must situate it, give it context, is the fact that she is anti-immigration. She is very nationalistic. Think of, what's his name? Donald John Trump 2.0. That is Marine Le Pen. And so it would be interesting to find out when the second polls are held, whether Emmanuel Macron, who claims that on the back of, the Russian engagement, he has been the arrowhead when it comes to the EU engaging Vladimir Putin. His attention was diverted a bit, and that has resulted in Marine Le Pen getting the following that she has. We'll see how the cookie crumbles in France. But let's also, there's a story about secondary education, success story of SEIP. That's on page 7 of the paper. On the back page, Ukuma Pema. And interestingly, in Kaya Hats, I would be talking all about it and but you see, Kumasi Asante Kotoko, we like to keep it even. We've opened a 16-point gap between us and the Phobia boys who couldn't fool anything yesterday. I know they'll come after me, but anything. But yesterday was another win for Kumasi Asante Kotoko. Like I said, they've opened a 16-point gap between them and last year's winners, Accra Hearts of Oak. Bechem United on 44 points, Indiana Stars on 39, Great Olympics on 39 as well, and Asante Kotoko on 52 points. Some are contesting the penalty. Maybe we should go back and look at it, but Hearts of Oak has had similar penalties against other teams. Was it Bechem or others? We didn't see anybody complaining about that. The Ghanaian Times newspaper now, UHAS confers honorary Doctor of Science degree on Doctorate Japan. Christians worldwide mark Palm Sunday. I was there. Yeah, I was there too. Deputy speakers can vote ruling. Plaintiff back to Supreme Court. That's Justice Abdullah. I'll be giving you some details of that story on page 17 shortly. He prays for a review of the decision. And CRI, Child Rights International, drags Attorney General to Supreme Court over child streetism. I was talking about these cattle on our streets. I was talking about lunatics, our brothers and sisters who have some situation upstairs and they need our help. We have to help them, not leave them on the streets. Here's another big problem. Mendicants, these street urchins, the children on our streets, another hazard. Hey, And school placement exercise, 93.4% of students placed nationwide. But let me just say a very good morning to Duncan Amwa, Executive Secretary of COPEC, who now joins the conversation. Good morning, Duncan.
Benjamin, good morning. Good morning to your viewers and your cherished producers as well.
Right. Duncan, something really, gets me ticking in a wrong way. And maybe you can summarize for me. The Daily Graphic this morning has a bit about cattle on the major streets of Accra, Graphic Road and others. There's also, I cited the bit about brothers and sisters who have some mental disorder who are on the streets roaming freely. The other day I heard of one who attacked somebody, and that happens. There are these street children as well, all of them on the streets. And we want this to be the cleaner city in Africa. What's your take? Quick one.
Well, Benjamin, when you see some of these fall-ups from societal challenges, you're simply dealing with institutions that are not working.
Right.
I do not think that the local assemblies have no role to play in ensuring that the streets are actually rid of these young men who now move in groups. And sometimes it gets a bit frightening when out of nowhere they just, gather around your vehicle and are giving you funds just so you can dole out money.
Yeah. It becomes scary. It becomes scary, Duncan, just as you're saying. And imagine being claustrophobic or something and having them, because sometimes they surround you. It's same with those who want to come and by force wipe your windscreen wipers and, your windscreens and all of that. It gets scary. I have a friend, just to share, who says one day she denied one of these children, and right when she was about to move, you know what the little boy did? He ran his, finger across the throat, basically threatening her. And all of these things are happening on our streets, and we're doing nothing about them, Duncan.
Well, then, clearly, authorities have seen. I'm sure this is not a situation they are unaware of. The typical Ghanaian, sympathetic thing. When I come across them, initially you are forced to want to give them some money to keep body and soul together.
Right.
But then at the point I also realized, I was also part of the problem. The more you give them money, the more you encourage them to stay there. Now, if you also don't give them money, because it becomes a mob sort of thing, it becomes a scary thing what any of them will do to your car. So
sometimes they scratch your car while they're there. When you refuse them money, they'll just scratch your car or dent it in a way. And you go and later find out they've scratched your car. They've done it to me before.
And authorities are probably quiet. I'm thinking the local assemblies are not living up to their job of decentralization. I am not certain that we would need officials from social welfare with the police to go chasing these guys. If authorities decided that you don't cross this path with your cattle, these cattle don't have engines or do not have flying, capabilities to say that they just flew and onto the street they landed. You see them moving from one part to the other. If you give these guys an indication, this is where your cattle is to graze. If we find it here, we'll confiscate it, and that's it. I'm certain that the right signal would have been sent. But again, the typical Ghanaian, mentality. Obia yet your pet, Obia to do what they remember. But a cattle, then if you are unlucky and one crosses you, that's the end of your vehicle.
Yeah.
Those are
if not the end of your life.
It could be the end of your life, actually. Those are very heavy animals that will cause a lot of damage, but you will find them sometimes crossing very busy streets, and it's like they have a lot more right to the road than even the vehicles that the roads are made for. The institutions that ought to sit up and work we simply think have abdicated those duties and are not living up to it. But clearly, there is a challenge. And Benjamin, the most frightening of this now is the kind of mobsters you are seeing gather around traffic lights. And,
Right.
you know, they will have to force to wipe your screen sometimes. And when you even they don't do it, it's like, oh, you're the bad guy. You don't want to give us money. These are dangers we are creating. They snatch people's phones sometimes, as I've probably been told during rush hour. If you are not lucky, you're talking on the phone, your windows down. So we are creating dangers. Unfortunately, the local assemblies that should be going around to ensure that these things are disbanded seem not to be doing much. And I think probably maybe the local government minister should be told directly that these are things that we expect you to do, not just have this abaye to be chasing traders who illegally set up. These ones are also illegally amassing on our streets, and we think that the earlier we disband them, put them in schools, or get them some vocation to go attend, the better it could be for all of us.
Just to feed in with that story in terms of the children specifically, so we can move on. On page 23 of the Ghanaian Times newspaper, it says, Child Rights International has sued the Attorney General at the Supreme Court over child streetism. Now, the applicant is asking the court to declare that the government of Ghana is in breach of Articles 15.1, 2, 13.1 and 35.4 of the 1992 Constitution for not ensuring that children receive special protection against exposure to physical and moral hazards as enshrined in the 1992 Constitution of Ghana. In the writ filed on March 3, the applicant, Mr. Bright Appiah, the executive director of Child Rights International, stated that child streetism posed a threat to the nation's security and urged the court to compel the AG, the principal legal advisor to the government, to resolve this conundrum. But let's get into other stories now. And a matter that we're going to be looking at today, school placement exercise. 93.4% of students have been placed nationwide. We've had concerns about visually impaired students who have suffered the brunt of the process, not been allocated schools. We've had instances where, per what we've heard from some of our callers, an entire batch whose results, a stay was placed on their results, and then later it was taken off, no placement. I've had personal calls, so many of them, parents who sometimes have to go through the back door just to get, things happening. While if the system were as efficient as we want it to be, maybe some of these Goro boys and girls wouldn't have the opportunity. But that is the take here. A total of 518,717 students out of the 555,353 who qualified for placement have successfully been placed into various senior high and technical vocational educational and training institutes across the country as of last Friday. The figure represents 93.4% of those qualified for placement. But what have you heard? What is your personal experience, if any, when it comes to the school placement exercise, Duncan?
Benjamin, I'm not sure my experiences will be any further from what you probably just enumerated.
Right.
Some bills being posted to female institutions, and I think somebody was actually posted to a driving school or something. The things you come across here and there, and then you have a majority of students now also asking for certain schools which they cannot be given.
Right.
I do think that we are not improving the system well enough. At the outset of pre-senior high secondary education, one expected that rollout would have factored in the grades of schools you have, where the usually grade A schools like the Achimota, the Presec, the Augustine, the Prempeh, often, schools that are highly sought after. Now, one of the things I would have wished gets done is to allow some parents, at least, those whose wards are able to make the required grades to these schools, if you give them some 50% quota, right, those who would want to pay fees or can afford to pay something for the awards, right, you leave them some 50%, especially when these kids fall within the grades of 6 and probably 9 or 12,
Right.
and are qualified to be there, and the parents can indicate their preparedness to still support these schools with funds, while the government also looks at a way of paying for the other students who don't have anything and probably cannot afford but are so brilliant. But it looks like we've lumped everything together. There needs to be a certain dialogue and education in this country, because clearly the systems that we put in there, hoping to achieve certain ends, seem not to be achieving them much. Others have been successfully placed, but what happens to those who haven't been as lucky and are probably still going through, bribe payments just to get the awards? And from what we gather around, you hear some parents talk of 5,000 cedis in order to get the award placed.
Right.
These are money that would have easily gone to the state,
Right.
actually. If you allow the parents to pay 3,000 or 5,000,
I've heard of anything between 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, 6,000. And one matter that has come to my attention, for some of them, they complain they've not been treated fairly. You know how, if you went to choose a Bishop Herman, my school, my alma mater, for example, as your second choice, you would probably never get in because it's an A-class school. Some people tell me that they went for some B-class schools at the time when they were applying for their children, their awards. And then by the time the placement started, these schools, some of them had been changed from B class to A class. So for whoever chose them as a second option then, B class or third option, you see what happens. So it creates a lot of chaos in the system. And it's really sad. It's really sad, Duncan. Maybe your wrap-up thoughts on that.
I do think that we can maximize whatever gain that we need to make at the education front. If authorities start again, took a second look at the systems in place and how to modify them. I do not also subscribe wholly to this whole computer thing, because take it or leave it. You will still get challenges. Maybe it should be a hybrid, a mix situation where in the past the headmasters used to converge, select their candidates or students. You could give them some 20, 30%, quota.
Right.
So that students who really clearly do fall within their admission pickup
Right.
are not left behind simply because the computer somewhere decided to place a student from Accra to
Right.
Sandema, and that is what the computer has done. So your award would have to simply go to. There should be some flexibility with that system, while also taking a second look at the whole free education concept and see how parents who are clearly still being fleeced now can contribute to the system to make education a lot more robust.
Right. Duncan, in the next 2 or so minutes, let's wrap. I want us to look at a few papers, just a few headlines from them. Republic Press, former First Lady Emily Akuffo dead. Our condolences to not just her family, but the entire country. JAK pays tribute to Veep's wife, of course, John Ajekum Kufuor. AKATSI on fire, police killed 2 in bloody clash. I'll be getting into that story, so you give us your quick take. I am ready for Privileges Committee. Kenny Japon Ranson, UHAS confers Doctor of Science on Dr. Japon, or Dr. Japon, I should say. Now, I want us to tie these 2 stories together. 2 died at AKATSI youth police clash. It's on page 6 of the Daily Guide. It's also on page 3 of the Republic Press newspaper. And it talks about uneasy calm in AKATSI, in the AKATSI South municipality of the Volta region, following a violent clash between the police and youth of the area. So far, 2 persons identified as Seto and Hamza are said to have died, while an unspecified number of youth are injured. It has to do with a police van as well, ramming into some motorists, 3 of them rather than 2, on a vehicle, some suspicion of there being criminals and all of that, which their families and the people in AKATSI deny. But in the interim, we have lost these, young people. And again, there is the accusation that the police is trying to cover up, because the vehicle involved has quickly been fixed and all of that, a whole lot of stuff. Tie that into this Central Region case where a physically challenged man has allegedly been assaulted by the police. So many things happening nowadays on the back of the interactions of the police with ordinary citizens. Quick take, Duncan?
Benjamin, again, the police as an institution would not always get it right. Sometimes they do get it wrong. It doesn't give our people also the license to attack them.
Right.
I do believe they should use institutions in getting redress. The media is always available and open to talk about excesses. I do condemn in no uncertain terms the attack by the AKATSI youth on the police. I've also picked snippets of information pertaining to some young men who were apparently crushed by a police riot control van and killed. I do think that the IGP should get into these matters and ensure that whichever of the officers that probably applied unnecessary pressure leading to the loss of these lives are brought to, order and immediately so as to restore that confidence that the people of AKATSI seem to have lost with the police interaction.
Right.
Whoever also assaulted physically disabled, I do not think that is what the uniform is meant to be used for, as has been demonstrated amply by the current IGP and the top echelon of the police. Before you take me out, however, there was a story you took on earlier about COVID and the World Health Organization.
Yeah, 65% of Africans
have been exposed to COVID one way or the other.
Right.
You know, if we take stock of this whole COVID enterprise, as I call it, I think that Africa was, marooned into some event that clearly didn't have much to do with its people. Send malaria to the West. I'm sure that would be a greater pandemic. We live with it. We're able to contain it. You
Right.
talk of this whole COVID thing destroying our economies, and how many people are we talking of losing? 1,000. Road accidents will kill more than that. Malaria alone would kill far, far more, yet it's not being treated as a pandemic. So sometimes I think that our health officials would need to evaluate some of these things. A flu, the herd immunity bit will kick in.
Right.
Like my professor would often say, go to gyms now and tell them about COVID. They live together, they eat together, they do all sorts of things together. Even if they contracted it, there is a higher chance of their immune system kicking that thing out. Yet, we went, with the West, chasing something that clearly didn't portend as much danger. We are not
Right.
dealing with 5,000,
Right.
1,000. Those people, unfortunately, as it may be, having lost their life, may clearly have had one underlying condition or the other, though regrettable. But the kind of damage COVID seemed to have done to our economy, I think it was excessive, and our health
Right.
officials would need to have reevaluated whatever the West was presenting to us.
Well, very, very cogent analysis there. Important points you make. Just two headlines to wrap. $4 billion to cushion African economies against Ukraine crisis. That's according to the professor. That's the head of Afri-Exim Bank, Professor Benedict Orama. There's also the BNFT. Tourists spend 60% of budget on accommodation. And as we talk about expanding our tourism market, if accommodation alone is taken 60% of what they bring into the country, what does that mean? But Duncan Amwa, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Have a great day. Auntie Abba, I met you yesterday. I know you watch the show every morning. Good morning to you. And I have this message from Joseph Odum coming through. You say, I'm not sure of this, but because you put it out there, I want to use your medium to wish my former boss, Mr. Stan Jose Dugbe, a happy birthday. God bless your future. Stan, if today happens to be your birthday, in fact, well then, a beautiful day to you, and do have a blast. Up next, we have sports. We'll be telling you all about Liverpool, Manchester City, the Reds and the Citizens in that modern day classic yesterday. Do stay.